The discovery. The stars held many secrets, but none had prepared the Galactic Compliance Council for what they found orbiting a small yellow sun in the Outer Rim territories. Deep space sensors had detected the usual signs of emerging civilization: radio waves, nuclear signatures, and the telltale electromagnetic patterns of a species taking its first steps into space. Ambassador Zixathera adjusted her ceremonial robes as she reviewed the preliminary reports aboard the flagship Orderly Progression. The data seemed routine enough. The third planet showed all the standard markers of a Class 7 developing civilization. They had achieved basic spaceflight, demonstrated nuclear capability, and even managed primitive quantum communication experiments. Nothing unusual there. "Another standard integration," she murmured to her aide, a nervous young Thoraxian named Clicktar. "We should have them properly documented and integrated within 6 standard cycles." Clicktar's antenna twitched with uncertainty. "Ambassador, there are some irregularities in the planetary scans." "Oh?" Zixathera barely looked up from her preparation of the first contact documentation package. After successfully integrating over 3,000 species across 8 centuries, she had seen every possible variation of emerging civilization. "Let me guess. Multiple city-states? We have protocols for that. Religious diversity? Standard procedure covers it? Tribal conflicts? There are forms for everything." "Well, yes, but..." "Clicktar, I have personally overseen 47 first contacts. The Galactic Integration Protocols exist for a reason. Every possible scenario has been anticipated, documented, and regulated." She gestured toward the massive data core that contained the integration guidelines. 47,000 pages of carefully crafted procedures. Whatever these... What do they call themselves? "Humans, Ambassador. Whatever these humans might present us with, I assure you we have the proper forms." But as the fleet moved closer to the blue-green world, the irregularities became harder to ignore. The planet's surface showed an unusual pattern of development. Instead of the typical unified planetary infrastructure that marked a species ready for galactic integration, the scans revealed something that hadn't been seen in over 1,000 years. "Ambassador," the ship's scanning officer reported, "we're detecting approximately 200 separate governmental entities." Zixathera paused in her review of Integration Protocol 4.7.3, Standard Greeting Procedures for Unified Planetary Governments. 200? That seems excessive for regional administrative districts. Are you certain your equipment is functioning properly? "Yes, Ambassador. But that's not all. These aren't administrative districts. They appear to be completely separate governing bodies. Some are even in active military conflict with others." The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle hum of the ship's life support systems. In all of galactic history, no species had achieved spaceflight while maintaining separate, conflicting governments. The very concept violated the fundamental assumption underlying every integration protocol. "Perhaps," Zixathera suggested carefully, "they maintain the appearance of separation for cultural reasons while operating under a unified authority?" "Negative, Ambassador. Communications intercepts confirm they make independent decisions on everything from trade to territorial disputes. Some of them don't even acknowledge the others as legitimate." The ambassador's aide began displaying holographic charts that made the situation even more confusing. "The humans have over 6,000 different languages, thousands of different religions, and their economic systems vary dramatically between regions. Some practice capitalism, others socialism, and a few appear to operate on systems we have no classification for." Zixathera stared at the data in growing bewilderment. "This is impossible. No species develops spaceflight without achieving basic planetary unity. The resource coordination alone would be..." "There's more, Ambassador. They don't appear to have any centralized authority for space exploration either. Multiple separate entities are conducting independent space programs. They're actually competing with each other to reach their own moon." The implications slowly dawned on the ambassador. Every single protocol in the Galactic Integration Guidelines assumed contact with a unified planetary government. The standard procedures called for identifying the planetary capital, establishing communication with the supreme authority, and beginning the formal integration process with proper documentation and regulatory compliance. "Who," she asked slowly, Do we contact for first contact? That's unclear, Ambassador. Our analysis suggests that any communication with one group might be interpreted as favoritism by the others. Some of these governmental entities appear to be actively hostile toward each other. The command deck fell silent as the full scope of the problem became clear. The most comprehensive integration protocols in galactic history were completely useless when faced with a species that had somehow skipped the basic requirement of planetary unification. Ambassador, the communications officer announced, we're receiving multiple transmission sources from the planet. Different groups appear to be attempting independent contact with us. Zixthara looked at the incoming communication requests with growing alarm. 17 different sources, each claiming to represent humanity, each using different languages and communication protocols. Some were offering trade agreements, others were demanding identification and permits, and at least 3 appeared to be some form of greeting ritual. This is unprecedented, she admitted. The protocols simply don't account for this scenario. Her aide pulled up the relevant sections of galactic law. According to Regulation 15.7.2, first contact must be established with the recognized planetary authority. But Regulation 23.4.1 states that we cannot recognize any authority without proper documentation of legitimacy, and Regulation 8.9.7 prohibits interfering in internal planetary conflicts. So we can't contact them without recognizing a government, we can't recognize a government without proper documentation, and we can't request documentation without potentially interfering in their conflicts? Exactly, Ambassador. The orderly progression continued its approach to Earth, while its crew grappled with a situation that had never occurred in galactic history. The humans below remained blissfully unaware that their first contact with galactic civilization was already creating unprecedented legal complications. Perhaps, Zixthara suggested desperately, we could contact all of them simultaneously, distribute the integration materials broadly, and let them sort out the governmental issues internally? That would violate protocols 12.3.8 through 12.3.47 regarding proper diplomatic hierarchy, Clicktar pointed out. And Regulation 34.2.1 specifically prohibits mass distribution of integration materials without proper authorization. As they entered Earth's outer atmosphere, the ambassador made a decision that would later be remembered as either the greatest diplomatic disaster or the most creative problem-solving attempt in galactic history. We'll establish multiple contact points, she announced. If they have multiple governments, we'll treat this as a multinational integration scenario. Ambassador, there are no protocols for multinational integration. The concept doesn't exist in galactic law. Then we'll create them as we go. The fleet split into 12 smaller groups, each heading toward what appeared to be major population centers representing different human governmental entities. As they descended toward the planet's surface, none of them realized they were about to encounter a species that would redefine the very concept of following rules. Below them, billions of humans went about their daily lives, completely unaware that they were about to accidentally become the galactic community's greatest challenge to organized bureaucracy, the misunderstanding. The 12 contact groups descended toward Earth with carefully prepared protocols and the confidence of centuries of successful integrations. Each group carried identical integration packages, standard greeting procedures, and the same diplomatic training that had worked flawlessly across the galaxy. Within the first hour, everything went wrong. Contact Group Alpha landed in Washington, D.C., expecting to meet with Earth's planetary leadership. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by humans in black suits who immediately began asking about weapons capabilities and military technology. The lead diplomat, Sub-Ambassador Vexinen, attempted to begin the standard greeting ceremony but was interrupted by a human who introduced himself as Secretary of Defense and demanded to know their defensive capabilities and strategic objectives. "We come in peace," Vexinen began, following Protocol 1.1.1 for initial contact, bearing greetings from the Galactic Compliance Council and formal documentation of, "Can your ships be weaponized?" the Secretary interrupted. Vexinen paused. This wasn't in any of the scripts. That is not relevant to integration procedures. We must first establish proper diplomatic. How many of you are there? What's your manufacturing capacity? Are there other alien species we should know about? Within minutes, Vexinen found himself in what the humans called a briefing room. while military officials peppered him with questions that violated at least 30 different protocols regarding appropriate first contact subjects. Every answer he gave seemed to generate 17 more questions, none of which appeared in his preparation materials. Meanwhile, Contact Group Beta was experiencing entirely different problems in Geneva. The Swiss humans had politely listened to the opening greeting, then produced an enormous stack of paperwork. "Welcome to Earth," the lead human said pleasantly. "We'll need to see your permits." Permits? Sub-Ambassador Quindar consulted her. Datapad. There was no mention of permits in the integration protocols. Landing permits, visa applications, customs declarations, and diplomatic credentials. Also, we'll need documentation of your ship's safety inspections, crew medical certificates, and proof of adequate insurance coverage. Quindar stared at the forms. The humans had somehow created their own bureaucracy that was completely separate from galactic regulations. "We have our galactic diplomatic credentials. I'm afraid those aren't valid here without proper Swiss authentication. You'll need to apply through our Federal Office for Foreign Affairs. The processing time is typically 6 to 8 weeks. Contact Group Gamma faced yet another unexpected scenario in Tokyo. The Japanese humans had prepared what they called a welcome ceremony that involved an elaborate gift exchange, precise bowing procedures, and complex social rituals that weren't mentioned in any galactic protocol. Sub-Ambassador Theklar found himself receiving beautifully wrapped packages while humans bowed repeatedly and spoke in formal ceremonial language. "This is great honor," the lead human said, presenting an intricately crafted sword. "Please accept humble gift as symbol of friendship." Theklar accepted the weapon, not realizing he had just violated Galactic Regulation 89.4.2 regarding unauthorized military equipment transfers. The ceremony continued with tea, more bowing, and the presentation of several other items that would later be classified as unlicensed cultural artifacts. In Moscow, Contact Group Delta encountered perhaps the most bizarre reception. The Russian humans seemed to interpret the alien arrival as some sort of challenge. Sub-Ambassador Kravex found himself being offered vodka while humans cheered and encouraged him to arm wrestle their strongest representative. "You drink," the Russian leader declared, raising a glass. "We make toast to friendship." "I cannot consume ethyl alcohol," Kravex explained. "My species processes it as a toxin." Ha! Lightweight. The humans seemed to find this amusing rather than concerning. "Then we wrestle. You show strength, we show strength, everybody friends." Before Kravex could explain that physical combat wasn't part of standard diplomatic procedures, he found himself facing a large human who introduced himself as Boris, champion wrestler of Siberia. Contact Group Epsilon's experience in Sao Paulo involved music, dancing, and a celebration that violated numerous noise ordinances according to galactic standards. Contact Group Zeta in Cairo was asked detailed questions about religious beliefs and the nature of alien souls. Contact Group Eta in Mumbai was immediately involved in complex negotiations involving 17 different family groups, each wanting to arrange marriages between their children and the aliens. Each contact group reported similar experiences. The humans approached first contact with enthusiasm, creativity, and absolutely no regard for proper procedures. They treated the historic moment as an opportunity for cultural exchange rather than a formal diplomatic process requiring careful documentation and regulatory compliance. By the end of the first day, the situation reports created a growing sense of panic aboard the orderly progression. Ambassador Zixathara reviewed the communications with increasing alarm. "The Americans want to discuss military alliances," she read aloud. "The Swiss want us to fill out customs forms. The Japanese gave us ceremonial weapons. The Russians challenged us to drinking contests. The Brazilians invited us to a festival. The Egyptians want to know about our gods. The Indians are trying to arrange marriages." "Each group believes they're representing the entire species," her aide reported. "But their approaches are completely different. Some are treating this as a trade negotiation, others as a cultural exchange, and several seem to think it's some sort of competition. And none of them seem to understand that there are proper procedures for this," Zixthera added. "When we try to explain the integration protocols, they just smile and ask if we want coffee." The communications officer looked up from her console. "Ambassador, we're receiving reports that the humans are sharing information about our contact." through their global communication network. The information is spreading faster than we can control it. What kind of information? Pictures of our ships, recordings of our conversations, and their own interpretations of our intentions. Some groups are claiming we're here for trade, others think we're explorers, and at least one religious organization has declared us divine messengers. Zixathara felt what humans would recognize as the beginning of a headache. In less than 1 day, the humans had managed to turn a standard first contact procedure into 12 completely different and increasingly complicated situations. The integration protocols assume cooperation with proper authorities, she said slowly. But these humans don't seem to have proper authorities. They just have people. Lots of different people with different ideas, and no central coordination, Irasio. Gets worse, Ambassador, Kliktar reported. Several human organizations are already attempting to reverse engineer our probe technology. They're claiming research purposes, but they haven't filed any of the required intellectual property documentation. And apparently, the communications officer added, something called the Internet is spreading rumors that we're either here to invade, to trade, to share technology, or to judge their species for worthiness. Different human groups believe different versions. Ambassador Zixathara looked out at the blue-green planet below and realized that everything she thought she knew about first contact was becoming irrelevant. The humans weren't following any rules because they didn't seem to understand that rules existed. And somehow, despite creating complete chaos in every single contact scenario, they all seemed genuinely happy to meet their galactic neighbors. The escalation. 3 days after first contact, the situation had evolved from unusual to completely unprecedented. Ambassador Zixathara stared at the reports flooding in from across Earth's surface, each one describing new violations of galactic protocol that she hadn't even known were possible. The humans had done something that no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had turned first contact into a global media event. Ambassador, Communications Officer Yilkra announced with barely controlled panic, the humans have created what they call alien tourism companies. They're selling tickets to visit our landing sites. They're selling tickets? Zixathara's voice rose to a pitch that concerned her medical officer. To whom? For what purpose? Apparently, other humans want to see our ships and meet us personally. The companies are advertising authentic alien experiences and once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunities. One organization is offering something called a meet and greet package that includes lunch. The ambassador scrolled through the marketing, materials that humans had somehow uploaded to their global communication network. Colorful advertisements promised close encounters with real space aliens and see genuine UFO technology up close. Some included what appeared to be testimonials from humans who claimed the aliens were really nice and very polite. This violates Regulation 67.8.4 through 67.8.23 regarding unauthorized commercialization of first contact events, she said weakly. There's more, Ambassador. Human scientists have obtained pieces of our probe technology and are conducting unauthorized analysis. They've published their findings on their global information network and are sharing the data freely with anyone who wants it. Zixathara pulled up the human research papers. The titles alone made her antenna twitch. Preliminary Analysis of Extraterrestrial Metallurgy, Unknown Energy Signatures in Alien Technology, and Reverse Engineering Guide to UFO. Power Systems, Open Source Project. They're giving it away? She asked in disbelief. Don't they understand intellectual property law? Apparently not, Ambassador. One group has created something called Open Source Alien Tech and is encouraging global collaboration on reverse engineering our technology. They've made it freely available to anyone with internet access. The reports kept getting worse. Human artists had begun creating works inspired by their alien visitors, including paintings, sculptures, and something called alien-themed music. Each creation technically constituted unauthorized cultural appropriation under galactic law, but the humans seemed to consider it a form of tribute. Ambassador, Kliktar announced, consulting his datapad, we have 17 different human religious organizations that have declared us either divine messengers, demons, angels, or test subjects sent by their various gods. Are they treating us as religious figures? Some are. Others are treating us as scientific specimens. And at least one group appears to believe we're here to judge their species for worthiness to join something they call the Galactic Federation. We never mentioned a Galactic Federation. No, Ambassador, they seem to have invented that concept based on their entertainment media. The situation deteriorated further when humans began attempting to establish trade relationships with individual aliens. The contact groups reported being offered everything from precious metals to local food items to something called cryptocurrency. The humans in Silicon Valley, reported Sub-Ambassador Theklar, have created digital currency specifically for trading with aliens. They call it Galactic Coin and claim it will revolutionize interstellar commerce. But we haven't established any trade relationships, Zixthera protested. There are protocols for commercial contact that require extensive documentation and regulatory approval. The humans don't seem to be aware of that. They're treating each conversation as a business opportunity. Several groups have offered to trade Earth resources for alien technology, while others want to establish cultural exchange programs that sound suspiciously like tourism ventures. The communications from Earth's surface painted a picture of chaos that grew more complex by the hour. Humans were approaching the alien presence with an enthusiasm that completely ignored every aspect of proper first contact procedure. In New York, entrepreneurs had established alien welcome centers where humans could learn about galactic civilization. In London, academic institutions were offering courses in xenobiology and cultural exchange. In Los Angeles, entertainment companies were producing movies about the first contact event while it was still happening. Ambassador, the scanning officer reported, human children are creating artwork depicting our species and sharing it through their educational institutions. Children? Zixthera looked at the crayon drawings that appeared on her screen. Colorful, primitive representations of the alien visitors surrounded by smiling human figures and bright stars. Are they mocking us? Our cultural analysis suggests it's meant as a friendly gesture. Human children apparently create artwork to express positive emotions about new experiences. What the cultural analysis couldn't explain was that each innocent drawing technically violated galactic regulation 234.712 regarding unauthorized reproduction of classified galactic entity specifications. Every smiling crayon alien was, according to galactic law, an unlicensed representation of protected intellectual property. The legal implications were staggering. Human news organizations were broadcasting detailed descriptions of alien technology and culture without permission. Social media platforms were sharing photos and videos of first contact events without proper documentation. Scientists were publishing research based on alien technology without intellectual property clearances. The humans appear to believe that information should be freely shared, Clicktar observed. They have a concept they call open source that encourages collaborative development and free distribution of knowledge. That's completely contrary to established intellectual property law, Zixthera said. Every aspect of first contact technology transfer requires proper licensing, documentation, and regulatory approval. Yes, Ambassador, but the humans seem to think we're sharing the information freely because we're not actively stopping them. The situation reached a new level of absurdity when human governments began competing to offer the most attractive incentives for alien settlement. The Americans offered citizenship and tax benefits. The Canadians promoted their universal healthcare system. The Norwegians highlighted their social welfare programs and natural beauty. They're bidding against each other for our presence, Zixthera realized. Like we're some sort of valuable resource to be acquired. Several nations have offered to establish alien embassies within their borders, her aide reported. They want to be humanity's official representatives to galactic civilization. But they can't all be official representatives. That's not how diplomatic relations work. The humans don't seem to understand that. Each group believes they can establish independent relationships with us. As reports continued to flood in from across the planet, Ambassador Zixthera began to understand the scope of the problem. The humans weren't just violating galactic protocols. They were completely rewriting the concept of first contact through their actions. Every rule, regulation, and procedure that had been carefully developed over centuries was proving inadequate for dealing with a species that approached everything with creativity, enthusiasm, and complete disregard for established authority. And The most troubling aspect of the entire situation was that despite creating unprecedented chaos in every interaction, the humans remained genuinely friendly, helpful, and excited to meet their galactic neighbors. They weren't breaking the rules. Out of malice or ignorance, they simply didn't understand that the rules existed. The bureaucratic nightmare. 1 week after first contact began, the Galactic Compliance Council convened an emergency session that would later be remembered as the most chaotic administrative meeting in galactic history. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the great chamber aboard the council station, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, telepathic buzzes, and translated speech. Chancellor Mordak of the Centauri Empire called the session to order with considerably less confidence than usual. We are here to address the unprecedented situation developing on the planet designated as Earth. The violation reports had been flooding in at a rate that overwhelmed the Council's processing systems. What had started as a routine first contact scenario had escalated into a bureaucratic catastrophe that threatened the very foundation of galactic administrative law. The numbers, announced Compliance Director Vex Thule, are beyond anything in our historical records. In 7 standard days, the humans have managed to violate over 14,000 distinct regulations. A ripple of shocked communications spread through the chamber. Even the most problematic species in galactic history had never accumulated more than a few hundred violations during their entire integration process. How is that possible? Asked Councillor Yiknara of the Peaceful Traders Guild. The most complete violation of protocol in our records was the Corvanian incident, which totaled only 312 separate infractions. Director Vex Thule activated a holographic display that showed the violation reports in real time. New entries appeared faster than the council members could read them. The humans have created entirely new categories of violations. They've managed to break laws that we previously thought were physically impossible to violate. The display showed a bewildering array of infractions: unauthorized technology sharing, unlicensed cultural reproduction, commercial exploitation of first contact events, religious appropriation of alien beings, and hundreds of others that had never appeared in any legal database. They're simultaneously claiming sovereign territorial rights while declaring themselves citizens of the entire planet, reported legal analyst Krindar. This creates a legal paradox that our systems cannot process. How can beings claim both individual national authority and collective planetary representation? It gets worse, added communications specialist Thexlar. Their global information network has distributed detailed specifications of our technology to their entire population. Every human with access to their internet now possesses classified galactic information. Chancellor Mordak's appendages drooped with exhaustion. Surely we can issue standard cease and desist orders? We've tried. Chancellor, the humans treat cease and desist orders as suggestions for improvement. They respond by thanking us for our feedback and asking if we'd like to collaborate on better solutions. The council chamber filled with the galactic equivalent of nervous laughter. It was unprecedented for any species to respond to legal violations with enthusiasm and offers of partnership. What about economic sanctions? Suggested Trade Representative Kulvek. Impossible, Chancellor. The humans don't have a unified economic system. They operate under dozens of different economic models simultaneously. Sanctions against one group are treated as competitive advantages by others. The situation reports painted a picture of organized chaos that seemed to defy natural law. Human children were creating artwork that violated intellectual property regulations. Human scientists were reverse engineering alien technology and sharing their findings freely. Human entrepreneurs were creating businesses based on alien contact without filing proper licensing documentation. Chancellor, Director Vex Thule announced, we have a new development. A human child's crayon drawing of our contact team has been classified as an unlicensed reproduction of classified galactic entity specifications. A child's drawing? Chancellor Mordak examined the colorful artwork that appeared on his screen. Smiling stick figures with large heads stood next to smaller figures labeled aliens under a bright yellow circle representing their star. According to Regulation 234.712, any visual representation of galactic officials without proper authorization constitutes intellectual property violation. The drawing has been shared through human educational institutions and is now displayed on thousands of refrigerators across the planet. We're going to prosecute a child for drawing pictures? The law doesn't make exceptions for age, Chancellor. Every violation must be processed according to established protocols. The legal implications were staggering. If the Council followed standard procedures, they would need to issue violations against millions of humans for activities ranging from taking photographs to creating music inspired by alien contact. The administrative workload would overwhelm every legal system in the galaxy. What about quarantine procedures? Asked Security Coordinator Zelnix. We could isolate the planet until they achieve proper compliance. Attempted Coordinator. The humans interpret quarantine as a challenge to develop independent space travel capabilities. 3 separate human organizations have accelerated their space programs specifically to visit their new alien friends despite isolation protocols. Ambassador Zix Thara, attending the session via quantum communication, provided ground-level perspective that made the situation even more complicated. The humans aren't malicious, she reported. They're genuinely friendly and eager to cooperate. They just don't understand that cooperation requires following established procedures. Can't we simply explain the regulations to them? Asked Counselor Bixtar. We've tried. They listen politely, then ask if we'd like to modify the regulations to work better for everyone. They seem to believe that rules are suggestions that can be improved through collaboration. The Council faced an unprecedented dilemma. Every tool in their administrative arsenal was designed for species that understood the concept of centralized authority and regulatory compliance. The humans operated under the apparently impossible assumption that rules could be changed, improved, or ignored if better solutions were available. They've created new legal paradoxes, legal analyst Krindar reported. By simultaneously violating contradictory regulations, they've revealed flaws in our legal framework that no one had previously noticed. What kind of flaws? Chancellor Mordak asked with growing concern. Regulation 45.3.7 requires all species to maintain unified governmental authority for galactic contact, but Regulation 78.2.1 prohibits interference in internal political affairs. The humans' multi-governmental system makes these regulations mutually exclusive, and Regulation 123.4.5 mandates proper documentation for all technology transfers, while Regulation 156.8.2 encourages educational exchange. The humans' open sharing of information violates the first while perfectly fulfilling the second. The Council members absorbed this information with growing alarm. The humans weren't just breaking the rules, they were exposing fundamental contradictions in the galactic legal system that had never been noticed because no previous species had approached integration with such chaotic creativity. Chancellor, Director Vexathul announced grimly, based on current violation rates and standard penalty procedures, the humans would face approximately 47 million years of legal proceedings and fines totaling more than the economic output of 12 star systems. That's impossible. Yes, Chancellor, which is why our legal processing systems have begun generating error messages. The humans have broken so many regulations so thoroughly that our administrative framework cannot calculate appropriate responses. As the emergency session continued, it became clear that the Galactic Compliance Council faced a choice that would reshape their understanding of law, order, and civilization itself. They could either attempt to force humanity into compliance with regulations that were proving inadequate, or acknowledge that their 800-year-old system might need fundamental changes. And somewhere in the background of every discussion was the disturbing realization that despite creating the greatest administrative crisis in galactic history, the humans seemed to be having fun. The resolution. 2 weeks after the emergency council session, Chancellor Mordak found himself in the unprecedented position of questioning 8 centuries of galactic civilization. The human situation had evolved beyond a simple compliance problem into something that challenged the very foundations of organized society. Chancellor, Director Vexthul announced, arriving at the emergency command center with data files that had grown beyond any reasonable size. We have an unusual development. More violations? Mordak asked wearily. The human violation count had reached numbers that no longer had meaningful context. Actually, no. The humans have accidentally solved several of our oldest administrative problems. The Chancellor's attention snapped to full alertness. Explain. The Corvanian-Zentari trade dispute that has been deadlocked for 47 years. A human entrepreneur named Jake from something called Detroit suggested a solution that both species accepted within 3 hours. How is that possible? Our best mediators have been working on that dispute for decades. Jake apparently didn't know the historical context, so he just asked both sides what they actually wanted and found a way to give it to them. He treated it as a practical problem rather than a legal issue. Director Vex Thole activated a holographic display showing the resolution. The humans have this concept they call thinking outside the box. They approach problems without assuming that existing restrictions are permanent. More reports followed. A human child had suggested a solution to the crystalline entity's energy distribution problem that had escaped their scientists for centuries. The solution was so simple that no one had considered it viable, but it worked perfectly. A human artist had mediated a cultural appropriation dispute between 3 species by creating something she called a fusion celebration that honored all traditions while creating something entirely new. The involved species were so pleased that they requested the human design similar solutions for other cultural conflicts. Chancellor, Communications Specialist Thexlar reported, the Thoraxian Hive and the Independent Rovers Council have formally requested human mediation for their territorial disagreement. They want humans to mediate a galactic dispute. Apparently, the humans' complete ignorance of proper procedure allows them to find solutions that our legal framework makes impossible to consider. The evidence continued to accumulate. Human scientists, working without knowledge of established limitations, had identified more efficient methods for several galactic technologies. Human social organizers had suggested improvements to trade relationships that increased efficiency, while reducing regulatory burden. They're solving problems by not knowing they're impossible, observed legal analyst Krindar. Their lack of respect for established limitations becomes a form of creative problem-solving. Ambassador Zixathara provided additional perspective from Earth's surface. The humans have created something they call crowdsourcing for several of our administrative challenges. They post problems on their global network and thousands of humans contribute suggestions. Most are impractical, but the few viable solutions are often better than anything our specialists have developed. Chancellor Mordak reviewed the reports with growing amazement. You're telling me that the species causing our greatest compliance crisis is also providing solutions to problems we've been unable to solve? More than that, Chancellor, they're revealing inefficiencies in our systems that we never recognized. The humans' refusal to follow proper channels has exposed bureaucratic bottlenecks that have been slowing galactic administration for centuries. The full scope of the situation became clear during a comprehensive review of galactic administrative efficiency. The Compliance Council discovered that many of their most sacred procedures existed not because they were effective, but because they had always existed. The humans' chaotic approach highlighted alternatives that no one had been permitted to consider. Their violations often work better than compliance, Director Vex Thule admitted reluctantly. A human approach to resource distribution is 30% more efficient than our standard protocol. Their conflict resolution methods are faster and more satisfactory to all parties. Their information sharing systems are more comprehensive and accessible than our classified databases. But they're breaking every rule of organized civilization, protested Counselor Yiknara. Yes, agreed Chancellor Mordak thoughtfully, and that appears to be exactly what organized civilization needs. The Council faced a decision that would reshape galactic governance. They could continue attempting to force humanity into compliance with regulations that were proving inadequate, or they could acknowledge that their systems had become rigid and inefficient. I propose, Chancellor Mordak announced, that we create a new classification for Earth and humanity. The chamber fell silent as he continued. The humans will be designated as a special administrative zone with unique operational parameters. Instead of forcing them to comply with our existing framework, we'll create what I'm calling the Human Exemption Clause. An exemption clause? Director Vexthal asked carefully. For an entire species? More than that. We'll officially recognize Earth as our designated problem resolution center. When our standard procedures fail, when our bureaucracy becomes deadlocked, When our regulations create more problems than they solve, we'll consult the humans. The proposal was unprecedented in galactic history. No species had ever been granted exemption from basic compliance requirements, let alone been officially designated as consultants for administrative problems. Think about it, Chancellor Mordak continued. We've spent 8 centuries perfecting our systems to prevent chaos, but we've created such rigid order that we can't adapt to new situations. The humans represent controlled chaos, unpredictable, enough to find new solutions, but friendly enough to share them. Councillor Bixtar raised a concern. What about the violations? We can't simply ignore millions of infractions. We'll reclassify them, the Chancellor decided. Human violations will be redesignated as experimental administrative approaches. Instead of penalties, they'll receive advisory status for similar situations that arise elsewhere in the galaxy. The Council spent the next several hours working out the details of what would become known as the Human Protocol. Earth would operate under special dispensation that allowed them to continue their chaotic approach to galactic integration. In exchange, they would serve as the galaxy's unofficial consulting service for problems that traditional methods couldn't solve. We're essentially creating a position for professional rule breakers, observed legal analyst Krindar. Exactly, Chancellor Mordak agreed. We're institutionalizing the kind of creative problem-solving that our rigid systems have been preventing. The decision required unprecedented flexibility from galactic administration. Human businesses would be allowed to operate without standard licensing, provided they shared their innovations freely. Human scientists could reverse engineer alien technology without intellectual property violations as long as they published their findings for general galactic benefit. Human artists could create works inspired by alien cultures without appropriation concerns, provided they credited their inspirations and invited collaboration. The humans will become our designated chaos agents, Director Vexthul summarized. When we need unconventional solutions, we'll ask the species that doesn't understand conventional limitations. Ambassador Zixithara reported the decision to the human contact groups with considerable apprehension. She expected confusion, demands for clarification, or attempts to negotiate better terms. Instead, the humans responded with enthusiasm and immediate offers to help with any problems the galaxy might have. That sounds awesome, declared the American, Secretary of Defense. We'd love to help you guys figure stuff out. This is most excellent arrangement, agreed the Russian representative. We share knowledge, solve problems together, make galaxy better place for everyone. We'll set up a collaboration portal, offered the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. Upload your problems to our global network and let crowdsourcing find solutions. The Swiss methodically began creating proper documentation for the new arrangement, developing forms and procedures for what they called regulated chaos administration. The Japanese designed beautiful ceremonies to celebrate successful problem-solving collaborations. The Brazilians suggested that all galactic problem-solving sessions should include music and food to encourage creativity. Within days, human organizations had created galactic problem-solving centers that operated 24 hours a day, staffed by volunteers who seemed genuinely excited about helping alien civilizations overcome administrative challenges. Chancellor, Director Vexthul reported a month later, the human protocol is showing remarkable results. Administrative efficiency across 17 sectors has improved by an average of 43%. And the humans? They seem delighted to be officially recognized as helpful. They've created something called Alien Appreciation Day and are planning galaxy-wide celebrations to honor interspecies cooperation. The transformation was remarkable. What had begun as the greatest compliance crisis in galactic history had evolved into the most successful administrative reform in centuries.